Today, we're not here to tell you how hard it is, 'cause you all know that. We're here to provide hope, optimism, pathways through the labyrinth, an understanding of different options, some of which did not even exist the last time Slamdance happened a year ago. Pleasure to have you all here. Clay, will you kick us off, please?
Sure. I'm Clay Pruitt. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I am from Seed&Spark. We are a creative marketplace working in streaming, crowdfunding, and education to build sustainable careers for independent creators while actively working to increase diversity and inclusion in entertainment.
I'm Cristine Platt Dewey. I'm with Roco Films. We're a boutique documentary distribution company that focuses on distribution internationally, also in the North American educational market. And in the last year and a half, we've gotten involved in as sales agents in repping documentaries in globally. So thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Terrell. I'm the Vice President of Content at SingularDTV. I apologize for my voice. This is ridiculous. So we're an entertainment studio and a blockchain technology company. So on the entertainment side, we are financing, producing, and co-producing features and documentaries and animated films. We're also acting as a distributor, either an all-rights distributor, acquiring films, or in partnership with other companies, co-acquiring films. On the technology side, we're building a suite of applications using blockchain tech to decentralize the entertainment industry, essentially to create a cleaner, more transparent, more effective pathway between artists and their audiences for rights management, revenue and royalty flow, and data sharing, valuing audiences' data, giving them something back for it, and ensuring that artists can create essentially a more sustainable ecosystem for their work that can build and grow over time with the audiences, with the true power of sort of data and an acknowledgement of the true revenue that they have on the table.
My name is Elissa Federoff. I head up distribution for Neon Rated, which is a U.S. distributor. We're about 2 years old. We are fairly new right now, so what we do is we acquire films and we do all the PR marketing and theatrical and ancillary distribution for them. We are getting into some financing and producing spaces, and we continue to, and we hope to continue to do that more and more. So I lead the theatrical releasing team. So basically planning your movie release in theaters.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Vergos. I'm the VP of Operations for Freestyle Digital Media. We are the digital division of Byron Allen's company, Entertainment Studios and Motion Pictures, who you may have known released 47 Meters Down with Mandy Moore, Hostiles with Christian Bale. We did Chappaquiddick with Ed Helms last year. We're basically an all-rights distribution company on the digital side. We acquire films, but we also offer a service model to filmmakers. So if you want to come in with your own marketing and distribution dollars, no film is too small, no film is too big. It's basically an open book with us. If you're coming in with a service deal, you are part of the actual distribution of the film with weekly meetings with our teams, with marketing and publicity, and we're not just taking your film and showing you the door. You are part of the release as well.
Okay, let's dig it a little bit deeper. Bill, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
How many movies or pieces do you release a month in all your different verticals?
Right now we're doing about 1 to 2 theatrical day and date titles a month with VOD, usually 10 screen to 20 screen releases theatrically, and then we're doing about 5 to 6 straight to VOD and DVD releases. And we have direct deals with all the major cable, satellite, and internet platforms. We also have a TV sales team, so we're selling to SVOD, all the pay TV, free TV, and also getting our films up on all the AVOD services like Tubi.
You said 10 to 20 markets, 10 to 20 screens?
Yes, for a theatrical day-to-day release.
How many markets might that be?
Well, it's 10 markets. Mm-hmm. We're doing 1 screen in each of those markets.
And how many play dates
For
might there
1
be?
week, and that's including New York and or LA.
Okay.
And that's basically, to qualify for the in theaters now, like on in demand through like Spectrum and Comcast and Cox. So you get the premium foldering and the premium pricing for 1 month.
Right. Did people understand what that means? No. Okay. What does it mean that you have to qualify so you get to the premium folder?
So if you go on all your cable like channels, I don't know which cable services that you guys have, but you can turn on like Spectrum or Comcast, and they have an in theaters now folder, which is a premium folder, basically just letting the consumer know that this is a film that's in theaters. It's of a little higher quality than just a direct to video on demand release. And so, yeah, so you have to have 10 theaters in 10 of the top 20 markets to qualify for that foldering.
You say no film is too small. Honestly, what's the lowest number that people can come to you in a service deal that you actually will engage with them?
As far as the budget of the film?
No.
Or?
How much in P&A do they have to come to you with for it to be a viable
Usually,
conversation?
if somebody just wants to get the film up and out on all the major cable, satellite, internet platforms, it's usually about like $5,000.
Okay.
And then we offer several a la carte services, such as marketing, publicity. Our parent company, Entertainment Studios, owns 8 HD television networks, including the Weather Channel. So what we also offer is 30-second commercials for your film on our networks, which combined have a 88 million household reach. They're on all the major networks like DirecTV, Verizon, Fios, Comcast, et cetera. I'm
going to come to you in just a sec. I'm going to do questions in a minute. I want to dig just a little bit deeper with everybody, so people can kind of see where you want to dig a little bit deeper. Elissa, I'm going to ask you. You have distributed movies at very large scale and very more micro scale. One size does not fit all. I wonder if you could just give an example of 2 movies that you have distributed the past year, one larger, one smaller, just so people can see the range of what Neon can do.
Yeah, so this year we distributed a movie called 3 Identical Strangers, which had a 90-day window. It was a documentary that has made over $12 million at the box office right now. We did a very, very traditional platform release for it, which means that we started in New York and LA, and we platformed over the course of about 6 weeks into more markets and more theaters, building the footprint theatrically across the U.S. That film was awesome. It really exceeded our expectations, and that is a classic definition of an art house, very traditional release that for the most part garners like older audiences. We used very traditional media. We bought commercials. We bought newspaper ads. We used digital to some extent. So that's an example of a larger release in a very traditional way. An example of a film that we did that was smaller with a different model is we put out a film called Revenge, which is it's by a French filmmaker, a woman. It's a really bloody, gory rape revenge movie that's genre and super awesome. And we did it in a day and date model. We actually co-acquired it with Shudder, which is a streaming service for genre titles. So they had all of the streaming service for it, and we had the theatrical for it. And we ended up going with it on about 100 screens theatrically, and it actually did really, really well because it was this movie that people wanted to see in both mediums. People wanted to, they wanted to transactionally buy it on their sorry, that was distracting me for a second.
Yes, there is art going on behind us right now.
So people wanted to buy it transactionally, but people really, really, because it sort of became this like a bit of like a cult movie before its time kind of thing, like a cult like movie that people wanted to see in theaters with audiences. So that's kind of, and that ended up doing really, really well. I think maybe 125,000 in theatrical for a movie that is at the same time on VOD and then 30 days later on an SVOD platform is really, really impressive. So that's an example of 2 examples of what we do.
Great, thank you. Okay, I am not going to ask you to define blockchain, but what I would love to do is ask you, can you give an example of a title and talk about how the transparency that you're able to offer the filmmaker was useful in your model, just
Sure.
because your model offers a different kind of transparency and a different kind of mechanic than others.
Yeah, well, so we're only a 2-year-old company, so we have our first slate of films really coming out to market, really starting in the fall. So our first use cases are just coming to the fore now. But just sort of to give you a perspective on how it works without explaining blockchain, we're actually a crowd-funded company utilizing blockchain technology. So in, I guess, October of 2016, we launched the SingularDTV token called Singles, and we sold it globally directly to fans and investors all over the world. You might have heard the phrase ICO or TGE, so like a coin offering, something that blockchain companies and blockchain developers are utilizing as sort of seed money outside of the VC system. It's been really effective over the last couple of years. So we made a series of promises to our token holders about what we were going to deliver. One was a documentary on blockchain, which we released in October. It's called Trust Machine, the story of blockchain. Alex Winter directed it. The second promise was a rights management platform, which we released last 2 Novembers ago. And it's called Tokit.io, and so that's out there in the wild. That's essentially where you create your rights management suppository on the blockchain. Depository. Suppository is definitely the wrong word.
But this is Slamdance.
Well, it is what it is. I'm super happy we're recording this. So the third promise was a science fiction television series, which we had developed, right? Because we're actually a artist-led company. Our co-founders are a film producer and a film director, and then and that's in development. And then the fourth promise was a decentralized distribution platform, so direct artist to consumer, and we're launching that in 4 days, which is pretty exciting.
Watch this space.
Right. So those were the 4 promises that we made, and so we said we're going to launch this token. If you purchase it, you're going to meaningfully participate in the success of this IP we create. And we raised $7.5 million in 15 minutes. So that became the seed money for the company. But what's exciting about it is these folks were truly investing in our IP. So Trust Machine, which is in the midst of theatrical and festival play, and it will launch on our platform and ideally other platforms over the course of this year, there's a token behind this film that's representing the rights and the revenue flow. And the folks that invested and participated in SingularDTV also participate in the waterfall of the film.
Excellent, thank you. Cristine, we're going to flip the page a minute because there's a whole education market, both in the United States and globally.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could talk about how you work in the education market in the United States and what that can mean for filmmakers, particularly documentary filmmakers. We have a lot in the house today.
Yeah, I mean, you guys probably all have heard this before. If you're working on a documentary, the educational market, that semi-theatrical market can be a real source of revenue for your film. Where Roco comes in, we come in as the distributor of your educational rights and your semi-theatrical rights. And our focus is on taking on a small number of films each year and then designing a custom strategy around marketing that film. And that is a very collaborative process with filmmakers and then the organizations that they've partnered with, often in the process of making the film. So to give you a better example, to kind of talk about a more concrete example, we've been working a lot on the participant films. This last year, we worked on the educational release of RBG. And so we worked with participant and the film team to develop a strategy to do outreach to law firms, because we felt that was a market where we were going to see, outside of our normal market of colleges and universities and organizations that we have in our database, Roco has the capacity to do some custom kind of marketing around a film. So we did it was really cool. It was like a screening out of a box. We had the RBG Teeny concept recipe. It was a little card with cute little ideas of cocktails that you could serve while you were hosting your screening of RBG. So it was a screening out of the box concept, and we pitched that to law firms. My colleague Ali Silvestri, who heads up the educational division, went to a conference of lawyers to kind of make those connections. So we have the ability to kind of be responsive based on the fact that we take on a small number of films.
And Clay, I wonder if you could give us an example of a Seed&Spark project. You have a very different model. You also believe in radical transparency, and maybe you could give us a very concrete example under the hood for that.
Sure. I mean, I guess I can talk about this from like a two-pronged approach. Certainly from the crowdfunding side, we sort of very paramount to that process that we teach in all of our crowdfunding workshops, and certainly like when we are in the process of working with you to build a campaign, that yes, it is important to raise the funds that you need for your project, but more important than that is actually the audience building component of it. That will take you all the way through the project in the fundraising portion, but also into distribution and really understanding, connecting with your audience and understanding, who's watching it, where your marketing dollars are actually being useful. And so when it comes to the streaming side, all of our streaming titles, they have what we call filmmaker dashboards that you can log in and see immediately where your clicks are coming from, what your minutes watched are, what the payout rate is, how much revenue you're earning. And really we're constantly working to build that out and be more transparent with any data that we possibly can gather. But that is, the one thing that, especially in the streaming space, a lot of the big players don't provide to filmmakers. And so you really have no control over how it's being marketed or, really learning about who your audience is, because you may have thought that it was one thing, but it's actually something else. And really, in terms of just looking at that from the scope of your long-term career and making sure that you maintain that ownership of your audience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we were all talking about before we started this panel was, and everyone unanimously assented, was how building your audience at the same time you start building your movie and putting your money together for your movie is the essential component of success. Whether you're in a purely self-distribution model, you're working with any of these people, they really want to know how you can reach your people and how you can bring your audience along with you, because that helps them. And the kind of real-time information that you provide, which is real-time information that you also get when you're distributing, you're constantly looking at where the audience is buying tickets or clicking through, and you're heavying up in those directions. You're going away from places where they're not, because that's the way you can be efficient and really hit the market, which you discover in part as you're going along, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We are, a more traditional studio, obviously, than, something like Seed&Spark, but we also really, really believe fully in collaboration and transparency with our filmmakers. So, when we put our marketing plans together and we work with the data that we receive, we spend, X amount of dollars behind the trailer launch, and we start to see who, the engagement is from. Is it organic engagement? Is it not organic engagement? Is it coming from 25-year-old males? Is it coming from, 60 plus? This is all stuff that we receive and we share. We do weekly calls with all of our filmmaking teams, and we really try to let them know on a weekly basis what is happening with their film, who is connecting to the film. A lot of times, we put out this film this past year called Assassination Nation, and we really thought it was going to connect with younger women, and it just didn't. It just was only connecting with older men. Not like older, but like 35 to sort of 45-year-old men, which was a really interesting experience for us. So, we kept sharing that information with the filmmakers, and so therefore, and we could take that information and we could work together on pivoting the marketing strategies in order to get more of an audience in than the one that we were just directly hitting. So that's to answer your question.
Yeah, and when you have that information, you have the capacity to pivot also. I think everyone here has used the word transparency. Note to the team, a word that would not be used with a lot of major distributors if, and you know who they are. if they were on this panel. We're not going to hold questions to the end. We're going to do questions as we go. You had a question, and I would love to know what's your name?
Thank you. My name's Pat Beckman. Hi.
Hi, Pat.
Vocalist, part 7 episodes. So it has to do with episodes being, it's several separate products. You mentioned $5,000 per film. Is that $5,000 per series product, or how would that be treated?
Well, we really don't. We're not doing series right now. We're just doing feature-length films, documentaries. We're not into the shorts or episodic just yet. We're looking to possibly do that. Basically, what the 5,000 would cover would be your encoding and delivery to all the major platforms on the transactional VOD front, and then also cover any subscription video on demand service sales like a Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, and then also any pay TV like Starz or Showtime or HBO or any of the free TV down the road, and then advertising video on demand. So that basically covers you to get the film up and out, and if it's something that you just wanted to control the marketing and publicity for, you could, and just basically go through us for the deals. Because with our parent company, Entertainment Studio Motion Pictures, being a big, studio entity, you're getting distribution of a small film through a big studio and still getting that, out there, which is nice.
And you said you're working on episodics, right? Okay. Is anyone on the panel working on episodics? Okay, so let's talk to what's your name?
My name is Traven.
Okay, so Traven and Pat, talk to them and let them know how you would handle episodics and how you'd work with them. Can you kick us off?
I mean, the thing about our model is it's really built for artists in whatever medium they work in. So we have a couple different ways of operating together. We do have a development team. We look at pitches. We look at pilots to explore bringing them onto our platform as exclusive content. Because we're looking to be sort of one of the major studios of our own space, right? So we have a platform that's truly open for anybody to use, and then on the studio side, we as content creators or producers are also bringing our content there. So we have a couple of TV projects that are in development right now. The sci-fi series I mentioned. There's another. It's actually a feature anthology that's being expanded out into a series. And so these are projects that we developed from page one in partnership with filmmakers. And then we're bringing them sort of through the whole process. We haven't acquired any TV content yet, but I'm certainly looking. We're really interested in the independent episodic space, especially because we want our platform to be a place where independent artists are really featured and heroed, as opposed to content that's sort of found everywhere.
Yeah, so, I just want to encourage you on that because, Roco, my focus is the international market, and we recently partnered with Impact Partners and went out to the international broadcast community to raise funding for Liz Garbus's series, 4-part series, The Fourth Estate. And what was interesting about that is we heard back, it was the first time a number of the public broadcasters had taken on a series. And Natalie Windhorst from VPRO came back to us and said, I've done it. This has convinced our executives that we need to be looking at series. They traditionally have looked at one-off documentaries. And that's been our background, kind of promoting one-off documentaries. But I would say the series concept, because it's doing so well, obviously, on the digital platforms, all the old traditional players are starting to look at that too as a possible model. So we're now looking at acquiring more series, and we're looking at a couple right now to do this international distribution for.
And Clay, Seed&Spark is format agnostic, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So we acquire and stream features, shorts, episodic, and certainly we've seen a lot of projects that they have like a pilot or even a full first season that will stream, and then that revenue goes directly into their crowdfunding campaign for their second season, and that's worked really well. And those episodic titles, they're amongst our most watched, right. And do incredibly well for us.
Ross, did you have a question in back?
It's about the blockchain financing model here. I'm curious to know how exactly you're allocating those budgets. I understand that you have your own blockchain currency. Do you guys invest in other blockchain currencies as well? And does the budgets that you allocate for production inflates or deflates depending on the market trends? How does that work for a filmmaker if a filmmaker is working with you?
Right. we're not a finance company, so we're not. I don't offer investing advice. We definitely don't sort of play the market. We're really focused on technology development, and that's where we invest most heavily. So it's really technology development and then content. That's sort of where we're spending our money. The ebbs and flows of pricing is exciting and weird and strange, and it's sort of a part of the new model that we're just sort of dealing with, and it's something that the sort of Ethereum Foundation, we work on the Ethereum blockchain, which is a public blockchain. There's a lot of brilliant minds kind of working on these issues, and there's future solutions. People are talking about a stable coin pegged to the US dollar price and things like that that can be implemented for use on platforms, but also as a financial tool that are sort of coming down the line.
Okay, so let's have some fun and let's get really practical. At the beginning, when I asked if people were filmmakers, a lot of hands shot up. Does anyone have a feature, scripted film, and anyone have a documentary film or short? And can you tell us about it in like just a log line, a sentence? And what's your name, please?
Florence Alexander.
Hi, Florence.
Hi. My film is called Ultimate Sacrifice, and it features Harry T. Moore, who is a civil rights martyr that predated Martin Luther King, and nobody knows about him because he was assassinated by the KKK in 1951, which predated the civil rights movement. And I would hope to get this full featured film out through a distributor.
Okay, fantastic. So your film is finished.
The film is
And
finished.
is it a documentary
It's
or?
a docudrama.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, we're going to do a few case studies. Okay, so hold those thoughts. But before we lose the thought, because you pitched it really well, you've done some things that are already fantastic. You have already thought about what the networks are and who the audience might be. Panel and team, let's help her out. What should we do? How can we get this film out there? Who would like to take a first crack at that? You? Oh, okay. Clay's reaching for the mic.
Yeah, why not? Well, I'm very interested in seeing it, first of all. And it sounds like you have done the work in terms of identifying your audience. And have you connected with these groups? Have you done test screenings?
Yes, actually at the National Convention, the NAACP allowed me to do a small screening of the film. But I feel that it's for general audience because it's a part of our history that is not known to whites, blacks, everyone.
I think we hear this a lot, that a lot of filmmakers feel like their story is universally appealing, and it very well may be. I mean, I have an interest in myself in the story, but I think it's really important that you most groundswells start somewhere, and it's important to really identify where you've got traction and where you've got allies, and start there. And honestly, something like this, that is a word of mouth project that as people see it in your target audience, it will grow from there.
Absolutely, in the African American community, especially with Black History Month coming up, and the universities.
So let me actually kick it over to you, Cristine. A title like this, obviously, we haven't seen the film. There are all these things, but in just sort of in a conceptual way, it's not a documentary, it's a docudrama. Is this something that Roco would handle? And if so or if not, how would you approach?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the documentary space around kind of these hybrid movements, docudramas, dramatic recreations. It's really exciting. And I think, can do a lot in educating people around kind of what the history is. So it sounds really interesting. I'd love to see it too. I want to pick up on what Clay is saying too about, a lot of times it starts with a micro movement and you have probably a nice connection with the NAACP. One idea I'm having, we've seen a number of the documentaries come to us that have been successful in getting foundation support. There's an alliance of interests. And so foundations have come on board and said, we want to help. One of the ways they can do that with educational distribution is sponsoring screenings of your films. So I would say that would be a really interesting idea to explore. Is there a foundation out there that could help in partnership with the NAACP, who could do some of the promotion work to sponsor getting the film into classrooms in communities that maybe maybe this would be a really remarkable experience for them, and they don't necessarily have access to these kinds of stories.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move across, but you just got a distribution connection over here. So yay, and cheers for that. What's your name?
My name is Kyle Ertzke.
Hi, Tyler.
Kyle.
Kyle. Hi, Kyle.
And I'm working on a feature-length documentary about the legal and illegal sale of dinosaur fossils and the impact that it has on the scientific community. It's about halfway through production.
Any advice or counsel for the dinosaur fossil scandal story?
I kind of love it. I took a class on dinosaurs in college, and it was impossibly hard. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think, as we've talked about building that audience, right, and starting with a core audience, I think it's something that you start building now, because this is definitely the kind of piece that clearly will work well in broadcast and TV and SVOD and in educational, right? So you sort of know where those spaces are. I would engage potentially, I don't know if there's someone on your team or if you have the time to do it, to really explore sort of the social media landscape. Who are the type of people that would be really into this, right? Like, who's listening to NPR every day, right? And like, what are the podcasts that people in this community listen to, and how can I kind of reach out, or at least start making a list of who are the people behind those podcasts, right? That would be excited about this kind of material. I find with documentaries, having champions outside of the film team is also really valuable if they have some sort of a reach or audience. It adds a layer of validation, especially here, not just sort of in the media industry, but you could tap into the scientific community, right? And getting that kind of stamp of approval will certainly raise the profile of the film and hopefully help you kind of cut through the noise.
Now, one of the things that Kyle just said is you're partway through making the film. You're not done yet. Correct. So there might be things that Kyle could do in making the movie and who Kyle puts into the movie that helps to create those champions. Yeah, please.
I just want to add something really simple, which is try to get a website up as soon as possible, and then put a form on your website where you're collecting information so that, the film has a presence right now out there. And you're collecting that information, because that can help you in terms of making the case to potential supporters and organizations that might get behind. I think you're right. The scientific community would be all over this. It's very trendy right now, this idea of true crime in the fossil world. I mean, that is awesome.
It's great.
I just wanted to ask, how are you financed?
Partially.
Okay. Have you done a crowdfunding campaign? Well, that is a great way to get financing and to build a core audience that, like we've been talking about already, and specifically hitting those communities. And also, everybody, has their feelings about crowdfunding, because we all know it's really hard, and it should be, because it's a lot of work. But there is a component, especially with a documentary like this, that feels very ripe for many granting bodies that have funds available for something like this, and also for private investment. But doing a solid crowdfunding campaign where you show that you have support of a large, group of people, and you can specifically target the partnerships that you've made through the process of making the film, that eliminates a lot of the risk for potential investors, because they see that there's a genuine interest from the audience that you've built, and also the connections you built from other scientific organizations.
Yes, please.
My question actually kind of dovetails with yours. That's a little bit. My name's Paul.
Hi, Paul.
We've got a film here with this guy here, Reiner. I'm a veteran, so it deals with some of my combat experience and so on. But I love Hostels because, believe it or not, if you relate to it, it's fictional and you can deal with a contemporary war situation. But there's a large market of veterans such as myself that is underserved, because we usually get the documentaries or the usual tropes that are out there that just I was in EOD, so Hurt Locker, of course, was right up my alley, but that was so fictionalized that resonated with I didn't think it was done. But anyway, my question is simply that there's such, I mean, you guys are all for profit, so obviously we've got to make money here, and there's a balance between the financial considerations with kind of pushing the envelopes with aesthetics, because most of you guys are rather new or not a larger brand. I imagine you are able to be a little more adventurous, so to speak, with taking some chances. That being said, how dangerous do you guys get as far as acquisitions, looking at market assessment and some of the bottom line numbers versus what might be an important film that may not necessarily make any money, but is really good for brand development or audience development, that sort of thing?
Could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think, yes, we obviously have to think about the financials of something, but as a company that does care a lot about issues, and we've, we're a company that, our CEO we've previously distributed a lot of documentaries. Now we also distribute a lot of documentaries. We actually opened Neon with a department for policy and sort of like social engagement. So we have we also have a boutique label called Super LTD, which allows us to get a little bit more adventurous with our acquisitions. So yes, basically under the Neon brand, we can be adventurous to a point. Obviously, we have to know that we're not losing too much money getting behind a film that we really care about, although that definitely does happen. We'll like something, and we'll like a first-time filmmaker, and we think that they've got, a great message, or it's an underserved audience, or it's something that we know it's talent that they'll go on to do more things, so it's absolutely worth the investment. We also use our label Super LTD to get a little bit, sort of crazier in our distribution models. So maybe something that is maybe just a group sales based, model of theatrical. So maybe we'll do a New York and an LA run. And then, within the middle of the country, we find, if we were doing a movie like a movie about, sort of a combat experience from like a war veteran's perspective, we know that is an audience that is huge. I mean, honestly, like Hostels, like I think that everybody was really, really surprised by that box office, and it spoke to a lot of different people. So we know it's out there. So we would definitely take the.
It's only when you talk.
I know. So we would get very much interested in a grassroots approach to it, and because we have this like sort of audience engagement team to get behind it, we would like really work with the filmmaker to pull out exactly who they know, what their reach is, where we can go with our reach, and we would work really, really closely together to kind of like, pull out all of those like niche audiences in order to make it worthwhile for both of us. So that's sort of our experience with it.
Yeah. So, Bill, I'm just going to kick this over to you, because another model is, let's say that Elissa looked at it and said, amazing, but we just don't think we can cover our costs. It's not going to be for us. That could happen. There is a service model which could also work for you, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. And specifically in the sort of values-driven social impact space.
Basically, this is a perfect type of model. Like, you come to us with your film. Nobody knows the film better than the filmmaker. I mean, and obviously we're here for the filmmakers. Yes, is it a business first? Of course. We're all in this to make money as well, but we're all in it to, especially in the documentary space, spread the word. And when you come in and you're saying, hey, Bill, we want to do a service deal through Freestyle Digital. We have X amount of dollars for marketing and P&A, but we want to be part of that process. We want to get the message across to the people that we made this documentary for, plus all across the world. And by you coming in and saying, okay, we'll work with our marketing teams, we'll work with our publicity teams. You guys are involved in the weekly calls with us. And, there might be ideas we have, there might be stuff that we're missing that and vice versa. And it's a collaboration. It's a partnership between us. And I think that's a big part of the service deal is, getting to partner together, collaborate together, and do what's best for the film on both sides, spreading the word, but also financially and getting the filmmakers and their, the producers and their financiers their budgets back.
Also, I just want to also mention that we're a company that believes in social impact for narrative as well as documentary. It doesn't need to just be like this like clear-cut social issue film. I really don't like that. Seems to me too narrow-minded. We've done like sort of like off-the-wall movies. Like we had this movie called Colossal with Anne Hathaway that was like a total ridiculous like monster versus, you know, whatever man type of movie that, you know, we did, you know, because it was very like female empowerment centric. And so we did a social action campaign like with Planned Parenthood for that film. And it's not like a, you know, a direct tie, but we felt like it was a really important thing to talk about because this is a movie about toxic masculinity and we want to get the word out. So, you know, in a company like Participant, you know, same thing. So, and being that we're a new and sort of adventurous distributor, you know, while we don't necessarily do a ton of service deals, like we're excited to talk about that. If, you know, there's a project that's out there and you guys have a budget for P&A and you come to us and you want to use our channels in our machine, like we'll talk about it, you know, and we're happy to do that because I think there's a lot of stuff out there that we want to do and that we can't always do because of the dollars and cents of it. So.
Just briefly. So on the platform we're building as it grows, one of the things that we're doing is creating models that incentivize audiences to actively share their data with us and engage, as opposed to on other platforms where it's sort of mined and then held by the platform. It's sort of a push through directly to the filmmakers. So, you know, I always go back to the "nobody knows nothing" quote about the film industry. We have a lot of algorithms built that recommend things to people. I'm really excited to see these audiences tell us what they want. And then reward them for that. So when we talk about if there's an underserved audience out there, it's going to change when they ask for what they want, right? And then we acknowledge it. And that could come by making unique films, right, that we haven't seen before. Or it can come through utilizing a technology like what we've built to actually get them to tell us and truly show us what they want and reward them for it and create a value there that can then be used to launch an exciting new voice, right? Or to build a sort of sustainable channel of these kinds of stories being told. So it's a little different. We don't have we're not a massive marketing engine like some other distributors are. We really are focused in engagement direct to audiences and having them tell us what should be presented and how, and letting them show us what's going to be successful as opposed to essentially trying to push something on them.
Yeah. Well,
that could be happening.
I just want to chime in on that too and say I think it is important as we talk to filmmakers. It's important to understand your film and how your film fits relative to other films out there that you think are really alike. Meaning that it's a process of matching your film to the right company with the right relationships. And we all have different sets of relationships and different ways we operate. So doing the homework of thinking about your film and what its strengths are, and then other films that you know that share those same similarities and who their distributor was and how that went. That can be a good way to help you narrow down where the right relationship fit is.
For those of you who acquire, how do you find the content you acquire?
I have a very, very small team, so it takes me a while, but we have a submission platform through our website, seed&spark.com/distribution, that you can submit, and we look at everything that comes through there. I do look at festival lineups. We do not have the budget for me to go to a bunch of festivals, so this is like one of 3 in the year that I'll be going to. But I do look at track festivals for what is playing and try to get in touch with the filmmakers that way. Also just trusted film programmers that I've made relationships with who are working directly with filmmakers who they know are struggling to find the right fit for their distribution plan.
Great. And let's just go all the way around the circle for that one, please.
We're also a small team, so for us, we do, you can email us, but if you have a connection, if you have a relationship, that really helps in terms of helping us focus and really respond. And then what we do is once you email us, if we think there's something there, we ask you to submit through a link that we have to an online platform.
So we do attend the major film festivals and markets, and also a lot of regional festivals, which I think are fantastic for discovery. We're really trying to build a content acquisitions team that focuses on artist services and artist relations as much as sort of just scanning a volume of content. So what that actually means for us is engaging with partners that have great taste, like folks up here, to recommend things to us, to collaborate with us on our acquisition. So, our slate of all rights acquisitions is always going to be very small by design. We want to sort of spread it around and be involved with more films that we feel like are exciting new voices doing something unique. So people can reach out to us to submit. It happens all the time, and we will look at it.
We primarily acquire our films at festivals throughout the year, working with agents who, pass us projects or set up meetings with producers and directors, hand us off scripts. We only put out about 12 to 15 films a year, so the pool is much smaller. People do reach out directly, that happens. And obviously, going the direct channels, you're not going to get the discovery, and that could be a way to get the discovery. So we are open to it, although it is sort of much less so how we actually end up with our content.
We also attend all the major markets and festivals. You can also do a self-submission through our website, freestyledigitalmedia.tv. A lot of it, fortunately for us, we've gotten a lot of word of mouth from other filmmakers that have put their films through us, had a great experience, and turned them on to their friends and other filmmakers. I feel we were very fortunate last year to have Dan Mervish, one of the founding fathers of this festival at Slamdance, put his directorial film Bernard and Huey through us. And just a little self-promotion, tomorrow here between 1 and 3, we're doing a panel, Dan and myself, to kind of talk about our company, Freestyle Digital Media, more of an overview that we're not going to be able to touch on here today, and talk with Dan as to why he chose us as his distributor out of all the others to put his film through.
Okay, great. Just a second, we have another one before you. I just have to share a personal reaction. I'm finding so much more openness and possibility and accessibility than I expected, and we would not have found that even 1 or 2 years ago. The wave has crested. I think we're definitely in a new landscape, and the opportunities for everybody in the audience are exponentially more than they were a year ago. So I think it's a really wonderful time. Go ahead, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted advice around short films. So our film, Gloria's Call, is about women artists and surrealism, artists that you may have heard of, maybe have not. But it's a short. It's a 17-minute film. Our storyteller is a colorful character who met these women back starting in the 70s and took these sort of wild adventures, and then we've animated their stories. We showed it at a conference of college art educators who were over the moon, thrilled with it. Everybody, how can I get it? How can I get it? We were at the very beginning. Can't share it with anyone yet. And then we went to what seemed like a likely distributor, and they said, we don't do shorts. We love your film, but we don't do shorts.
Well, the good news is there's people up here who do shorts. Okay, good. And we actually plan to talk about shorts, so this is a perfect opportunity. Cristine, could you start with this?
We're relatively new into the shorts, actually. And so, on the international side, we've taken one short. Honestly, in that market, we felt like we didn't necessarily tap into what we wanted to. But we're starting to form relationships with distributors that are doing shorts distribution. So, honestly, it's new for us. We haven't yet done a short in terms of educational distribution. It's really interesting to hear the reaction you got from the Conference of Educators. I think that's something I should share with my colleague, Ali Silvestri, who heads up that division. So, yeah.
Can I just add one thing? The irony of this is that I'm a school teacher, and I can't deal with features. Because it's too long. I need shorts.
Yes. And we're talking about that. And we're talking, whenever we have a feature that we're going to put out educationally, we're talking to the filmmakers about making shorter versions.
Yeah.
So we know that's important. And I think it is an exciting potential new market. And I think we're trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, just a personal note to piggyback on that. And then I know you do shorts also. They're shorter length, but I'd love you to speak about that as well, because there's some other short filmmakers here. One of my more recent documentaries was a film called A Plastic Ocean, which we had very good theatrical release, very good Netflix release. We also cut a 55-minute international TV version, and we cut a 20-minute education version. We did so well with the education version. We wrapped curriculum materials around it, and we had it staged for junior high, and college level. It's perfect for a single education period. We did very, very well with it. And we found it was a really good way to promulgate the message of that film. So, I think that it could well work with yours also. Talk about what, if you wouldn't mind, what Neon is doing with shorts, the length requirements that you have, but also the fact that you've had some embrace from exhibitors in doing it, which has changed a lot.
Yes, it has.
Changed a lot.
So when we launched, we really wanted to bring back, because many years ago, a feature was always attached to a short when it would play in a theater. So that was something that we wanted to embrace again. So when we launched our first year's slate of films, all had a short attached to the front of the feature that thematically sort of went together. For us, we are acquiring shorts. One of our obstacles in acquiring shorts is that we need a short that's really no longer than 7 minutes, and we prefer things that are shorter than 6, and that is because it's going at the head of the feature and it's playing in the theater, and exhibitors are notoriously, annoying about run times. So the longer the movie is, the more problematic it is. So there we are adding another 6 minutes to somebody's 20-minute trailer experience. Then they're short. Then they're however, we have, and basically what we did was we would create 2 DCPs just to be good partners with our exhibitors. So we would have one with the short at the head, one without the short at the head, and basically go out to everybody. And it was like, it's been like a very time-consuming process, because we have to do this with every single theater that we're showing in. And do you want to show the short? Are you going to show the short? No, okay, fine. But everybody has done it. Across the board, we've had pretty much 100% participation outside of AMC, who refused to do it for the first year of our program, and then finally they caved. So now we've gotten participation from everybody, and I think the only times that we really don't show a short in front of a feature is if we do a Q&A or something and we have to make it a little bit shorter.
I just have a question, if I can. Is there more story there? Because what you gave me, there was like a 5-second pitch, and I'm picturing this feels, it could be a series, it could be a feature, and I'm not a believer in saying to make a short in order to make a feature, because they are a standalone art form. But I am curious, because sometimes it's just, well, this is the money we have, and this is the ability and the time that we have, versus this is a whole and complete story, and it's perfect as it is.
That was the other piece of feedback. We wanted it to be longer. And we did some people gave us a little bit of money, and instead of making it longer, we decided to use that money to get it out in the festival circuit and use it for distribution to develop that. But it could be, I don't think it's a feature. But we're sort of using this to kind of promote our next film.
And there we go. Right. Yeah. So so we talk about sustainability a lot, and when we're looking at artists we want to get behind, we say we need to change the narrative, and artists need to start thinking as entrepreneurs, right? And that means not just looking at this one project. Making any film is really hard. So it's easy to just focus all of your energy there, but as soon as you hit with something, you have to have the next something ready. And so our goal is, let's think about the next 10 years of projects, and how your company or your director, whomever it is, evolves and grows as an artist and a brand. It's not really a bad word, right? And engaging and having an audience build and grow and support you over time. So that would kind of be our approach to it. If you're hitting roadblocks with the short, it may be that, you know, it's maybe the format isn't quite right for the story you're telling and people can't communicate that to you correctly. Or maybe it is that, you know, it needs to be something else, right? Or that there's additional material there. And you could find the right partner and platform to help you kind of build that story and that community.
I would just add, I'm really curious to find out more, but Matthew Pacini, who has a 10-minute short in the Sundance Film Festival, just had it picked up by Fox Searchlight, which I'm not, you know, I don't know more than that, but I think that's really interesting. So I think all of the distributors are starting to look at shorts differently. Yeah.
I just want to add that this feels like it could be a really great experience in a room, like in the room with the audience. Something that we're starting to experiment with is, I hesitate to call it a day and date release, but we're partnering with the film that crowdfunded with us, and they're starting with a festival premiere, but then they're doing a self-distribution, and they're going sort of one-off eventized one night only screenings with the film while it's concurrently streaming with us. So it's sort of building that in-person experience and audience, and it sounds like there's probably also like a performance component that you could tag on to this and like have a really fun evening, and then, you know, for everybody that was there, they go home and it's like, oh well, you can watch it on Seed&Spark if you missed it, you know. So I'd be interested in taking a look at it.
I also just want to mention, like, if you just have, you know, working with theaters and exhibitors a lot, I've sort of found that, like, if you have like an art house in your community, like, they're much more willing to do things if you just call them up and talk to them than you sort of realize. So if you have your short film and you live in Amherst, Massachusetts or something, and you have your art theater there, you know, they a lot of times they work with you, and, you know, maybe on like a 1 p.m. show on a Saturday or something, you know, you say, I want to come in, like, you know, we don't have a lot of money to maybe rent the space, but maybe we can figure something else. We want to show this. We want to do a panel of artist speakers or whatever it is. So that's something that I wish that filmmakers sort of knew more about, because I've been kind of like a producer on like a smaller scale of things, and I've kind of done that myself. And just because how else do people just want, you know, people most of the time just want their stuff seen and get it out there. And how do I do that? And sometimes you got to get a little creative in that way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the 1 o'clock show on Tuesday. What's the number? So what is it? 87% of all theater seats are unfilled over the course of a week. So there's real opportunity, not Friday night, not Saturday night, but when theaters are not full, local exhibitors are really willing to talk because they're trying to figure out how they fill those seats.
I just came from
and sell that popcorn.
Art House Convergence earlier this week, and we had a whole panel discussion about how eventized screenings, of one-off screenings, are actually very lucrative for local art houses. And I mean, you can reach so many people that have such a specific, you know, niche interest that way.
You had a question, please go.
Seeking advice on building audience, I have a hallucinogenic animated series. It's a total art, science fiction, 21, and it's based on the environmental apocalypse through a dysfunctional family. It's like Pink Floyd meets climate change. All right. Now it could appeal to as an educational product, because I have a doctorate in educational psychology, and I'm really bringing in deep, immersive, feeling like hair standing on your edge emotions in this. But it could also really appeal to the pop culture. So I'm trying to figure out how to really build an audience, engage, because I found through distribution on Instagram, I really hit teenagers hard because it's built on a comic book series I wrote, and the teenagers really love that type of stuff. But that's two diverse markets, and I'm trying to figure, can I appeal to both? And can I self-distribute and then come to you guys with this audience, or is it spoiled goods if I self-distribute prior to meeting with you?
Let's take that question first. Is it spoiled goods if you self-distribute first? And then let's go to the marketing council question. Did everyone hear that question? Okay, is it spoiled goods?
I think, at least on our end, it kind of is, because we want to be able to have access to all of our platforms and get it up everywhere. You know, we're not just, but we're open to, you know, kind of piecemealing as well. Like, so if you have your film on iTunes or Amazon, but you're not able to get it up on cable and satellite because you really kind of have to go through a major distributor for that. We're open to taking those rights, but we'd want to time it with you on the same date that you were doing, your deal with iTunes or Amazon. Because if it comes out prior to that, then an in-demand or DirecTV, someone's going to be like, well, it's already been released out there and we're really not interested in it. So we're open to saying, okay, I have a relationship with X platforms, but I need these guys. Let's talk together and, obviously figure out the marketing together, how to publicize it, but time the release on the same day.
So if there are multiple episodes in the series, you would release them to maybe film festivals as you create the episodes, but keep it as a pure arc, undistributed, before coming to you.
Yeah, I would hit festivals first and then,
You would feel exactly this. You'd feel exactly the same way, right? Listen, and everyone else would feel exactly the same way?
No.
Not except for our outlier Clay.
No, I mean, I think there's always opportunity to find a new audience. We have a lot of titles that started on other platforms and they sort of plateaued or dropped off, and then they came to us and they've been doing really well. So to speak to the first audience building part of your question, have you done test screenings with these two different audiences?
Yes.
And have you engaged them afterwards about sort of what their experience was?
Yeah, they really like it.
So something that is part of our crowdfunding to build independence workshop that you can book through our education website is the line of questions that you ask the audience that you're sort of using as like a test subject. It's just like, where do you find your movies? Where do you get your news? Really engage them on that level so you understand, like, if they enjoyed what they just watched, you can find similar people on wherever, if you're seeing similarities in where people are answering, where they're spending their time, where they're looking for new films, yeah.
Just really quick on this. Does anyone remember Too Many Cooks?
Oh yeah. Classic.
Right? Are you familiar with this?
I'm going to be singing in my head all day.
I know.
Now.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that, Clay. So I think this was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, in the middle of the night at like 2:30 in the morning, out of nowhere, a fake intro to like an 80s sitcom came on called Too Many Cooks. And it started like sort of very vanilla and like total 80s, cinema or TV. And then it devolved into this nightmare horror show. It was like 3 minutes long.
No. It's like 10 minutes.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right. It's
because
like 10
that's
minutes
part
long.
of it. You're like, when is this going to
It
end?
never
it just
ends.
keeps going. Yeah.
And it blew up, right? And that was a standalone thing. But when you described your piece, it took me back to Too Many Cooks. And I think we are certainly in an Instagram age right now. I think there's a lot to be gained by surprising people and figuring out strategically how to do that, and making sure that if you want to go an independent route with your content, that you're positioned to monetize that surprise whenever you do it. So you can go through a distributor, but with your kind of content, there are plenty of alternate means of doing it yourself that could create a real return. And again, where you truly meaningfully own that relationship with the audience, but it's going to take like you got to find your surprise moment.
Please.
We have a short form digital series pilot that's narrative here that I think the audience is family. It's about a little girl. It's about multiculturalism, and then there's a magical realism element to it, which is what I'm hesitant to do crowdfunding, because I feel like we're pitching for the full series now, but not just a little bit, like enough to really do it well. And I find navigating digital platforms completely overwhelming. I don't know what your advice around
of a pilot, where it's something that we want to get the one piece out, maybe to build an audience,
Yeah.
but then ultimately we want to make the rest of the series.
Right.
So, again, that spoiled goods question is, if we put out a pilot, it gets a lot of eyes. Are we kind of?
I know these are like very specific and not very common examples, but like awkward black girl, high maintenance, like. It's a proven product that has a provable audience, and that has a lot of value. So if it's good and you get the traction that you want, and I don't. I mean, I think there's definitely people out there that pay attention to that. I mean, we certainly.
And I think the standards are different in the episodic or webisodic space than in the feature film space, in terms of what is damaged goods or what is goods that have a proven audience, and you've added value by demonstrating that 50,000 people are really enjoying what you've made. Any other comment on that? Did you have a follow up on that?
So you're suggesting really
If you can promote it and find an audience for it.
As indie and rebel as everything I'm saying is, I actually want to caution you that it does depend on what kind of show you want to make and where you see the show. Like, is this an HBO show? Is this a Starz show? And in which case, there might be a more traditional, formal pitching process. You might want to have representation. You might want to go in the room. So I know that's completely opposite of everything I talk about, but you should also be honest about your goals for the project.
Good comment. Yes, please.
I'm Brian Menace. I'm a composer. I'm here with Behind the Bullet, but I'm here in this room. I worked on another project, a feature-length silent film. It's all hand-drawn, and the director artist that I worked with on this has done a series of these. Or they're not necessarily a series, but a lot of them. So he has a catalog kind of built up and hasn't really known what to do with them. So I'm kind of partnering with him to try to figure out distribution of some sort. So my question is there any value to try to sell this catalog together, or should we approach each film individually? And I have a follow-up question on another thing you talked about earlier, but I guess the first one there.
I mean, I would sell it together.
Yeah.
As a block, especially like companies like us where we're looking for a lot of content. It's better than to piecemeal each film to go and find a home. That way you're working together with us and saying, hey, this is how we can market it together, and just keep everything under one roof. I think that's the best bet for you guys.
And I guess another question, these can easily be ported to foreign markets because it's silent films, everything's text. Is that something that any of you deal with, or like how would we approach that? I'm kind of new at this. I'm trying to figure it out.
So you have a musical score, obviously, that goes with it. So we distributed a film called Samsara, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, and that was no dialogue at all, just beautiful imagery, beautiful music, and I would say out of our films, we have over 450 films in the marketplace across over 20, 30 platforms. It's our #1 seller on iTunes and has been for the last 5-6 years. So it was people knew about it, had heard about it. They'd played certain specialty indie theaters, art house theaters first before they came to us. And it's just still been going strong.
Final quick question there. Back when you were talking about going to the art houses, we actually had talked about that to try to build up an audience for it. That doesn't hurt distribution chances at all to do your own kind of mini theatrical kind of campaign?
I would say you can sort of get away with it on a certain level. I would try to restrict it just to kind of using the festival circuit as your theatrical circuit to sort of start it out. I think sure, it doesn't hurt probably to be in your local art house, but if you have a New York City premiere of any size, then it does kind of hurt things.
Yeah, and you might call them preview performances.
Yeah.
Right. Just to keep it clean. If your target was a distributor like Neon, to really allow Neon to have the ability to premiere it when they release it. Yes, please.
That's kind of a weird question. I'm just wondering, is there any room for like nice and sweet and sensitive and quirky? Because I like dark and angry and I love that stuff, but I'm sitting on a documentary that made the festival circuit before Wall did. It's been great. It's got great reviews, won awards. But people react to it in a very different way, and it's kind of hard to know what to do.
Right. There were a lot of millions of dollars thrown at sort of down Main Street towards nice and sweet and quirky a couple days ago. But I saw you reaching for the microphone.
Well, I was, and then you said documentary, which changed it for me a little bit. But family film is probably the best seller every single year. It's completely evergreen. Moms and dads are always looking for stuff they can watch with their kids, right? And that doesn't mean it all has to be animated with horses and stuff like that, right? Animals help hugely. Horses are good as long as the horse doesn't die. Well, that's a different movie.
College quirky though. It's not really kid stuff. I mean, kids that have seen it have liked it. But I don't know if they got it.
There is a challenge to being kind of an in-betweener, right? And that's something that you might just need some feedback on from people, because there might be things slight adjustments you can make. I don't know where you are in the process, but there could be adjustments you could make, or it could just be discovering who the audience is, and maybe it's different than who you thought.
I'd also like to add that I think we've seen consistently over the past couple of years, the audiences don't want dark right now. They really don't. That is not what is attracting attention. Is not what is making money. People really want something escapist, uplifting, inspirational. I know that we had a sort of a dark, edgy slate over the fall that really was not successful. And, we just decided to pivot this spring. We were like, we just want to release movies that make people happy, because that seems to be what audiences want.
I think also just in the documentary space, I think it's really refreshing to find something that's not so hammering you over the head with, I've shed enough tears at this festival already.
Yeah, we actually have a documentary coming out in April called The Biggest Little Farm, which is this just awesome documentary about this couple who over a 10-year period of time starts an organic farm outside of Los Angeles. And for me, sort of selling it to exhibitors across the country, it is one of the first documentary films that really has has all exhibitors excited about it. Like Regal, AMC, Cinemark, you talk to them about a documentary, they're kind of like, let's see how it does, and then we'll talk later. This movie is something that they're like, oh my gosh, it has a family angle, it has an educational angle, it has a science angle, it has a foodie angle, it's not preachy, it's all of these things that we can really sell to our audiences in a great way, and we can really package it for group sales and reach out to churches, and we can reach out to schools, and we can reach out to, so if you can think of also places that might be interested in this content based on what it is, you can sort of sell that along to a distributor when you're, making your pitch.
Clay, could I ask you to just, if there's any last nugget you would like to leave people with today?
Gosh, I don't know. Keep making amazing movies and series and whatever it is that you're making, because it has value and there is an audience for it.
Yeah, and I would say, I just want to echo what's been said about think about your entire career. I mean, one of the things that really excites Roco is the idea that we're providing a sustainable source of revenue that helps sustain careers. We were just talking to a filmmaker the other day who was sharing, the revenue checks you're sending us for our last film are what are allowing me make my next film. So recognizing that those relationships with distributors often end up being long-term partnerships, and kind of going into the process, finding the right match, thinking of it in those terms.
Whatever the projects are, just give yourself the time to take a look in the mirror moment and be really clear what your goals are with it, because it's different with every project, with every artist, at any moment in time, because that's really going to tell you who you should be working with. The project itself, right? It's not just, we could all love it, right? But it could not be right for any of us for any number of reasons. And we'll come up with ideas on who to market it to, and we would work with you with that. But we need you to be the one to lead that charge and say, this is what it is, and this is where I want it to go.
I would say something that's really important to think about when you're, making whatever form of art you're making is that you make it the best that it can be, for sure, but also don't think about what audience you're trying to reach. Don't try to get broad with it. I would say that when you have something like, for example, your project, that it's going to speak to a veteran community, I would say that actually the more niche you go and the more specific your audience is, and that it's going to hit that specific audience very, very well, it actually gets more broad and universal as a result, rather than you kind of being like, I'm going to bring in a little bit of this to hit that guy and a little bit of this to hit this group. Then I think you actually kind of lose your thread. So that's my advice to people is like find specifically exactly the audience you want to hit and make the best thing that you can make.
There's riches and niches, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just don't give up on your passion. I mean, that's what's driving the films, the docs, as your guys' passion to make the best possible response to you. And again, there's a market for everything out there. Everybody's interested in something. So, and the other thing I just want to touch on, I know we touched on a little bit as far as the marketing. I'm always telling filmmakers when they're going into production, pre-production, make sure, again, you have your websites up, you have all your social media pages up, shoot as much behind the scenes as you can possibly use, because that's a big thing for us when we're distributing your films, is to have content, especially over the first 3 to 4 months of, the new release window and everything. Because we have filmmakers come to us, so like we never had a stills photographer. We never had anybody shooting behind the scenes. And nowadays with an iPhone, you can have one person, an intern, doing that all the time, and just having a whole buildup of content that we can use for the first window of release and any other time that we re-promote and get the film back out there.
And I'm just going to wrap up by saying thank you to everyone here. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, guys.
You're all amazing. An extension of my own work as a filmmaker and a producer is starting MediaU, which is a new training, learning opportunity. We're partnered with Slamdance. We're partnered with University of California, so you get real college credits. We're launching next month. And I invite you all to check out MediaU as well. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you at the festival.